which included some Orton-Gillingham-based reading instruction, as well as a core instruction plus strategic interventions depending on how that assessment kind of placed the students. And then there's the core instruction that had intensive, more one-on-one approach with the students. And this is kind of a snapshot of the data that they got from that pilot program, which is the benefit of it being kind of prompted by the state, is that, as you can see, the black and green line show the at or above student population that are above the benchmark, and then the red dashed lines show the well below student population. And so this right here, the one on the top is basically students that participate in the program all the way K through third grade, and so they were tested every year. And you can see that the at or above population continues to increase while the well below continues to fall. Below is also the student population that started in first grade and continues to the third grade to the end of the follow-up. Right here is this is a summary of Upper Arlington Results. What they concluded from their results is that early intervention reduced the number of students that are deficient in reading, as well as reducing the number of students that they needed in special education and overall special education spending. They established some trained Orton-Gillingham reading specialists in the school districts, and they kind of forged a better bond with the parents of the students in the district that had dyslexia. And right here is kind of a good graph of, they implemented this program and students were tested, and basically these bars represent the number of students that were below average in phonological awareness. And then the same students were tested the next year after, having the interventions put in place, and the number of students dropped significantly.
So where are we asking you to go from here? We came up with a list of priorities that we would like to see implemented based on some of the discussions that we have had as a group. First, we would like to see the continuation of more professional development, identifying students earlier on, provide intensive instruction, assistive technology, policy changes, parent-teacher dyslexia handbook, and a dyslexia resource person. These last two, we're thinking are further down the road, not necessarily right away. Those are kind of maybe a year or two down the road. So first, professional development. Initially, all K through 12th graders we would like to see receive more professional development. We want the teachers to understand dyslexia, what it is, Dyslexia 101. What dyslexia looks like in the classroom, how to identify students with dyslexia, instruction that helps students with dyslexia in the classroom. Teachers to understand what structured literacy is versus whole language. And more specific training for the upper grades. We feel like the lower grades are getting a little bit more professional development than the upper grades. And as our children are moving through the upper grades, we're noticing that there are more and more teachers that don't understand what dyslexia is, and they're not able to help their children. Wilson training, as well as more professional development on assistive technology. Identifying students. Why do we need to identify these students? Because we found, as we talked about earlier, the earlier we identify the students, the easier it is to remediate them. CTOP 2 can identify struggling readers in kindergarten through college. The Ames School District is currently piloting tests to identify gifted and talented students. So we feel that it is also our responsibility to identify those that struggle to read. Poor reading impacts all subject areas. CTOP has the ability to identify specific deficits in reading, making it easier to tailor to individual instruction. It will also help those who are labeled as lazy or stupid or have behavioral problems when we can actually identify what's really going on, that it's actually that they're struggling to read or spell. So all students can learn to read if given the correct instruction. Using the Upper Arlington and other Ohio school district models, we feel that we can benefit from taking a look at the way that they have set up their program in terms of how to use CTAP to identify early and use the three-pronged approach to early identify and give quality instruction, teaching and training, and progress monitoring, along with using that model to do the phonological awareness, the phonological memory, and the rapid naming, and then dividing them into those groups that we discussed earlier. All struggling readers, K through 12, should be tested the first year, and then thereafter, we will just need to test the kindergarten and first grade students and new students. Students identified as struggling readers using CTAP need intensive instruction using structured literacy programs. Using Foundation's double dose, Dyslexia, small group instruction, or evaluate for special education. 3rd through 12th grade students need intensive instruction using Orton-Gillingham programs, Wilson reading or Barton spelling instruction on assistive technology. So once again, this just shows the same flow chart that we looked at earlier with Ohio in kindergarten and first grade. So that's the same one we had seen earlier. Assistive technology. This is a really important area that we would like to see site licenses that are standard throughout the school district, and we feel that's important because it levels the playing field for those who struggle to read, write, and spell, reduces absenteeism, helping engage the students to show their strength and understanding of subject matters, helps students access grade level material when they are reading below grade level. A very good example is my daughter loves to be in the same reading group as all of her other peers, even though she can't read the same books that her peers can read. And so I have the choice of either spending my money to get Audible so that she can read that book, to listen to an audio book, so she has the same, so she can be in the same reading group as her friends, or I read that book out loud. So I either choose, do I spend that money so she can access that book, or I read that book out loud to her at night and spend the extra time with her, because I don't necessarily have access to all those books. So that's a very good example of her not being strangely pulled out of class for different things. So I really feel like this is a very important one, and as they get older and middle school and high school becomes even more important too. So assisting poor spellers, word prediction and spell check, provides an alternative for students with handwriting difficulties, provides opportunity for early correction, offers visual auditory support for English language learners, and assists all students who have disabilities. We really feel like not only can this help students with dyslexia, but we really feel like this reaches out to other areas beyond just students with dyslexia. Policy changes allow tutors to come into school buildings during school hours. Right now, the current policy does not allow that because tutors are for profit, and the current policy does not allow that. We feel it would really benefit not only the students, but the school district as a cost-effective way to give intensive reading instruction if that policy were to change. And it should be at the discretion of the principal to allow the tutors to come into school. The conversation should be between the principal, the teacher, and the parent for the best time and the least disruptive time. The students in 3rd grade and above do not have the benefit of foundations. Currently, the district is not meeting the needs of the students with dyslexia in reading, writing, and spelling. And students are exhausted after school, after spending the whole day trying to keep up with their peers. And then they tend to miss sports and clubs when their parents make them go to tutoring. The dyslexia handbook, that's something that we feel would be a really positive resource for both teachers and parents. And we would like to see that addressed maybe in a year or so. A dyslexia resource person, an individual with extremely knowledgeable in the area of dyslexia that would be available through the school district. This resource person would be for both the teachers and parents, and has a thorough understanding of structured literacy in Orton-Gillingham. Certified in Wilson, knowledgeable in various assistive technologies, knowledgeable in CTAP assessments, provide assistance with college transitions, for college applications. There are some colleges that give accommodations for students with dyslexia, and so bridging that transition we feel would be very beneficial. Help provide appropriate 504 plans for students not on IEPs.
Do you want to do it for me so I don't hit the wrong thing? So we acknowledge that these things we're suggesting are going to cost some money, but some of the things don't, like Sarah just mentioned, the policy changes. That does not cost any money, but it would benefit our students. But we believe that investing in our children's future now has long-term benefits that far outweigh the cost. The Ohio pilot project that Erin talked about, they found great cost savings in the long run over the money that they put in at first. And so in their summary, they had this paragraph: a cost effectiveness analysis of the dyslexia pilot project in year 3 indicates cost savings attributable to the pilot in light of the number and percentage of students with rates of improvement that would exceed the expected rate of improvement and preclude the need for more intensive individualized intervention, which is a big mouthful of a sentence. But basically, they found the students improved more than they expected them to, which eliminated the need for that individualized instruction later. So they said all of the participating school districts that met the requirements for the pilot project in year 3 demonstrated meaningful gains in student rates of improvement in year 3 that will likely be sustained with the initial pilot project investment. Over time, all of the school districts will have cost savings that exceed the initial investment. Some school districts will reach that point sooner than others, but they all ended up being able to save money in the long run. So front-loading those costs is a lot like preventative care at the doctor. You go to the doctor to try to catch all those problems early so you don't have the long-term problems, so it's the same idea. And there are ways to support these struggling readers in the classroom with accommodations that cost absolutely nothing. And the task force can work on that, and they can be taught to teachers during professional development. So addressing these needs up front and supporting these students has a lot of positive side effects besides just teaching them to read and spell. You save time dealing with classroom social, emotional, and behavioral issues because a lot of those will disappear once they're more comfortable. Teachers will therefore have more time to spend on the curriculum. You get better student attendance if they're not embarrassed to come to school and read, but they're more likely to want to come to school. Fewer students will need special ed over time. And they prevent students from becoming a burden on the system, like the one quote we had earlier. A lot of these kids end up incarcerated with low-paying jobs, unable to maintain their employment, or just being unemployed. So the mission statement of our group is to inspire, develop, and support change within our schools in order to provide the most advantageous learning opportunities for students with dyslexia and all struggling readers. So we have this last quote: learning disabilities are not a prescription for failure. With the right kinds of instruction, guidance, and support, there are no limitations to what individuals with learning disabilities can achieve. And I just want to share 2 quick stories. One about my son, who was identified in 5th grade. He'd struggled throughout elementary school, was identified dyslexic in 5th grade. And if he had had this back in kindergarten or 1st grade and was identified as having some weaknesses in phonemic awareness, none of those problems would have happened. He would be much better off where he is today. But he'll be fine, and we want you to know that we are not specifically asking for our children. Our children, we have the resources to help our children, and we are working with them. They'll be fine, but there's so many kids in the district that might not even know that they are dyslexic and that something could help them. I started a tutoring program with structured literacy program, the Barton Reading and Spelling at the public library. And so my other story is about a 7th grader who I'm tutoring. She is in the Ames Community School District. She's been in special ed since she was in 2nd or 3rd grade. When she started with me, they told me she was still reading at a 2nd grade level. She refused to read any books. She hated books. She didn't like her special ed. She wasn't making any progress on her IEP. I've been tutoring her for 5 months. She's now asking her mom to buy her books. She is reading them. She is making progress on her IEP goals. Her reading teacher is thrilled. Her mother is thrilled with just 5 months of this kind of instruction. So we have you have them in your packet, 2 slides of the resources we use for this presentation, and then Helen's going to wrap it up.
So, as you can see, we have put a lot of time and effort into this presentation. We have done a lot of research. We are all parents with struggling readers. we have come across a lot of parents just through our conversations. And we know that there's a real need, and we know that the district is doing stuff, but I think with a collaboration with us, that we could really make some difference. And just looking at Upper Arlington, I mean, their statistics are phenomenal. And it didn't seem, and to us it doesn't seem too hard to implement. I'm sure it probably is, and it will take some time. But we've already got foundations here in our district. So there's just a few more things that we need to do, some education with our teachers. And you know, we are a strong district. We're one of the top districts in the state. We can still be better, and we can be a leader for our district. So we're hoping that today we want a commitment and a timeline. I know Mandy's not here, and Tim, you're on your way out. But
how many times do you hear that?
but we still value your opinion. You're still important to us, and I know that you know, I've been here in this for 8 years, and 8 years ago I brought somebody to the district to try and help, but we didn't get any support, and it was mainly teachers, parents that came to a presentation and a class that I did. But I think now's a good time. You know, I just hope that we can make a commitment to a task force. So, questions? Do you have any? Yes? Go for it.
I love questions. First off, thank you. Very organized. I appreciate that it's based in research. I appreciate just the format of this. It's very user-friendly from where I'm coming from and my experiences with all of this. First question, and this is awful that I have to ask this, but when you talk about assistive technology, what do you mean by that?
So we're looking at things like Learning Ally is an auditory book. So for students who can't,
I heard you say that. Okay.
So if students can't access grade level material, like you're reading a book as a class, that would be something that would be, they could still access that material, they still improve their vocabulary, their comprehension, spelling, all of that. Other things would be like Google Read and Write. So that has, it's a little thing that you put onto your computer, and you can have word prediction on there, so it helps students who don't spell very well. It has feedback with your grammar and all of that, so you're getting immediate corrections. Okay. It's leveling the playing field so that these students can access grade level material and show that they are capable students versus writing something by hand, where their spelling and their grammar is looked at versus the content of what they're
And Helen, what you're asking for is the district to provide that.
Yes, to provide site licenses.
Those things, the site license.
Yes.
Because those things are available to individual parents, but they're cost prohibitive.
Right, and we did have a slide, but we, just for time, we took it out. But it basically, if you buy something like the audiobook, $150 per year just for an individual license. Well, actually, that's not a good example. Google Read and Write, it's $150. If you've got a site license, it's $1.25 per student, and the whole district can use it. So it is a cost for the district, like $7,000 for these licenses, but it really makes a huge difference for these students.
So Lisa, this year the district purchased Snap and Read,
Right.
Okay.
which is a type of assistive technology.
Okay.
It doesn't do all of the things that Helen just mentioned, but it does.
Right.
Basically, I think the rudimentary version of it, you take a picture of a text and the text will then be read out loud to a student.
And so that's,
So I
yeah.
know they're using that a lot at the secondary level.
Okay.
I'm not sure how much they're using it at the elementary, I'm sorry. I don't have
right,
that
and so
information.
things like that. So when we were in 4th grade, we were told about that. Are you using it? And it's like, we didn't know how to use it. The teacher didn't know how to use it. So that's why we want professional development on a variety of assistive technologies,
Yeah.
so that.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with that. I agree. I don't know much about it
Yes.
either,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
I know we have purchased
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
Thank you.
assistive technology.
I think another point is establishing that it's okay to use that assistive
Yes.
technology.
Okay.
Because I know, at least from personal experience, my daughter doesn't want to feel out of normal. And using sometimes that assistive technology is, kind of puts her out by herself. And if, it's something that's available to everyone, maybe the other kids will use it, become more of a normal thing, and, it won't be as much of a
Stigma.
stigma.
What was the first program you mentioned?
Learning Ally, ALLY. It's audio. And I've got information